Hey there, everybody. Or if people are even here yet, I always feel like, doing a little like tap dance routine here at the very beginning, because I never know if anybody's watching until like about a minute or so into being here. So I don't know what to talk about. These first little bits are always so awkward. Oh, wow, there's a person. There's an actual human being here. Hello, everybody. Good to see people here. Otherwise, if you weren't here, it would be a little bit boring, to say the least. So here's what we're going to do today. I have some things that I want to talk about, but also, for a little bit, I figured I hadn't done this in a while, so I thought I'd come on for like about a half hour. If you have any basic astrological questions that don't pertain to your own horoscope, feel free to ask them here. The reason I say don't pertain to your own horoscope is because generally people ask questions about their own horoscope, and I'm only looking at a few factors in their Rashi chart or maybe something in their Navamsha chart, and it doesn't give the strongest foundation for an accurate assessment. So it's not really the best thing to do, because then you start believing things about your own horoscope based on just 2 or 3 planetary positions, okay? But I'm here to ask astrological questions about how things work, etc., etc. Hello, everybody. That first couple of minutes when I come in, it's all these hellos, yeah? So hello, everybody, okay? So if anybody has any questions that you'd like to ask, it's a good time to do that. How am I doing? I'm doing okay. I got stung by a wasp today, though. It's the first time that's happened since I was in my 20s, right? Do aspects work similar to conjunctions? Conjunctions are always stronger, okay? All right, let's see what else anybody else has to ask. And just feel free to, to put them in the window over there. And I may not get to everybody's questions. That happens sometimes. Inevitably, there are 1 or 2 people who will repeat their question about 25 or 30 times. I may not be able to get to everybody's question. Please understand that. Okay, so just so you know, you're saying Jupiter retrograde in the 9th house conjunct Rahu in the sign of Libra. Well, that's not giving me very many things, because I don't know the strength or weakness of Jupiter. I don't know the strength or weakness of Venus. And that's why I say I don't usually like doing these quick horoscope assessments along with somebody else who's now going what to expect when Ketu is crossing over one's natal Rahu in Capricorn. Well, that depends on the rest of your horoscope. Okay, so let's just be clear. I'm not here to do quick horoscope assessments, okay? I'm sorry to disappoint with that. It's just really, it's from the space of ethics, because in doing that from a space of ethics, it's not very ethical, because I'm giving you an inaccurate answer. And I believe astrology is more powerful than that. So I don't want to give you inaccurate answers, okay? Ketu in Shatabishak Nakshatra. Well, in general, the individual's previous lifetime or the individual's predisposition is to feel like they have a special mission in life. You may find from time to time that as they go about trying to fulfill that mission, things get a little bit chaotic and out of control. That's dependent upon the nature of Rahu in the horoscope, okay? Do planets in the 10th house affect the spouse's happiness? They can, most definitely, because that's the 4th from the 7th, okay? How to know about soul connection with the person in previous birth time. Any particular planetary combinations? None that are completely fail-safe. You're still, have always a minute amount of presupposing on that level. But generally, when there's a nodal connection, especially from the nodes to the nodes, that's a pretty strong indicator, okay? Let's see what we've got going on here. How to study natives' romantic life. Well, it's not just from the Rashi chart. You also have to look at the Saptamsha chart in order to understand their sexual predisposition, their capacity to form good relationships with other individuals, as well as looking at the Navamsha chart to see their potential to commit, right? Rashi chart shows what the life path is focusing on at any particular moment in time. So the life path may show finances are very important to you at this moment in time. Then you go and you look at the Saptamsha and the Navamsha, and you see the individual gets into a relationship, but it wasn't strongly indicated in the Rashi chart, right? So those are things that are important to understand. Okay, we've got a lot of people here now. I want to kind of come out with the beans about what I was wanting to share with everybody today, which is, you guessed it, my Jaimini Level 1 webinar course starts this coming Saturday, the 11th of August at 4:30 p.m. London time. And it's still open for registration. If you're interested in registering, for those of you who don't know much about Jaimini astrology, it's a really excellent system for understanding the concrete realities of an individual's life. So what do I mean by the concrete realities of an individual's life? Well, first of all, there's concrete prediction. So what is concrete prediction? It's a way of predicting when you're going to get a bag of concrete. No, I'm only kidding. It's a way of predicting things that are going to happen concretely, right? Such as, are you getting married? Or when do you get a good job? Or when do you get money? Or the concrete things of an individual's life. But the thing is the Jaimini system is solar-based, whereas Parashara astrology is lunar-based. It's based around the nakshatras. Jaimini astrology is solar-based because it's based around the rashis. So Parashara astrology, since it's lunar-based, shows the subjective realities of an individual's life. And it can also show the concrete realities, but the concrete realities are shown from a subjective point of view, such as the individual feels really wonderful about this marriage that happened, or the individual feels miserable about this marriage that happened. Jaimini astrology shows strongly and concretely, individual gets married, individual makes money, individual gets a job, but it doesn't show quite as much about how the person feels about it. So ideally, it's good to have a complementary understanding of both systems, because the two can work really well side by side when you know how to work with each system independently. That's one of the things we're going to share on this course amongst many other things. But Jaimini astrology is absolutely wonderful at going, you're getting married at this point in life. But you might find you're getting married at this point in life and you go and you look at Parashara astrology, but you're not happy with the marriage, right? Or it's very difficult for you to get married, but you're okay with that, as Parashara shows. So it's good to understand both systems, but Jaimini astrology is great when you really need to concretely know something. It really excels at doing that. In addition to that, Jaimini astrology is really good at helping us to see the concrete realities of an individual's life. Like I said, aside from prediction, concrete realities such as how many children will an individual have? Will the individual get married at all? What type of house will they live in? Which really is a technique that's to be used for something else, which is understanding the emotional toughness or weakness of the individual, understanding their emotional needs. Jaimini astrology is also really good at understanding what weapons an individual will excel at. And I just did a recent video on that. And that's a really good technique to understand how an individual handles conflict. So this is a level 1 course. We're going to learn 2 dashas on this course that are very universal dashas, plus a lot of other techniques going sutra by sutra through Jaimini sutras. If you want to register, you can do that either by trimester or by payment in full. The trimester is a little bit cheaper if you're not able to register in full immediately. But in the long run, it ends up being slightly more expensive. Or if you want to register in full, you can do that too. And this is a 44-week course. This starts, this coming Saturday, the 11th, and it ends next July. We're going to take a break over the holidays in mid-November until early January. There's a link up above in the video. If you want to follow that link, it'll take you to the registration page. So thank you. And let's see what else people have to say here. Just catch up. Okay. Let's see what we've got. All right. So what is my general take about being born in the 2-week span before eclipses and having Sun conjunct Rahu? Well, the broader thing that you're asking about 2 week span between eclipses, that's really has to be determined per horoscope. But Sun conjunct Rahu is a little simpler, which is Sun conjunct Rahu people, generally they have had some authority figure in their life at some point who has told them what they're going to be, whether that be their father or their mother, whoever it may be. Somebody in their past has gone, when you grow up, you're going to be this, or when you grow up, you're not going to be this, right? And so the individual grows up not knowing themselves. And so when they reach adulthood, they naturally begin to start seeking themselves. Only thing is they start seeking for themselves in external things. So they start, like if they get into astrology, they're going to go, wow, I'm an astrologer. I'm so into astrology. I'm going to be an astrologer. And they get, several months into that and all of a sudden go, no, I don't think that's meant for me. And then they move on to something else and they try to identify with that and then find out that that's not them. So ultimately they're trying to identify with things externally only to find that it's not them, of course, because they are what's inside, okay? And once they begin to discover who they are inside of themselves, then the external search begins to calm down. That's a general tendency for Rahu conjunct the Sun. Okay, if everybody will pardon me, I have a throat lozenge in, so I don't want to rudely crunch on it in front of your face, so bear with me. It's an occupational hazard. Us astrologers talk all the time. So with it being an occupational hazard, sometimes I have to do a throat lozenge. And a cup of coffee. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Okay, it's never as simple as just saying a planet in a Gandanta point. What is it going to mean? Because you have to take into consideration the nakshatra dispositor, which I actually have come up with a new term for, which is nakshatra emissary. Emissary is a messenger, because planets don't really rule nakshatras. Deities are associated with the nakshatras, but the planets are important as per the dasha system, and they do decide what happens on a certain level in that dasha system. So I think planetary messenger is a much better statement, but you have to take into consideration the planet that's connected with the nakshatra. You have to take into consideration the strength or weakness of the planet that's in the nakshatra. There's so many factors to take into consideration. That's why I'm never big on going too deeply into these questions, because so many different factors tie into it. I can't just come out and say, oh, Mars in Gandanta point 0, you're definitely going to have this, right? You might have an unstable relationship with siblings or your associates, right? That might be something that's there, but that's a very vast generalization that may or may not come true based upon your horoscope. Okay, let's see what else we've got here. Okay, so I'm kind of moving over some of the questions. What astrology books do I recommend? There's a lot of astrology books I recommend. One I really recommend is the book that I'm going to use on this Jaimini course called Upadesha Raw. Sorry, I think it's Jaimini Raw or Upadesha Sutras Raw by Ernst Wilhelm. It's a very good book on Jaimini's Upadesha Sutras, probably the best translation I've seen. In addition to that, there's a book by Bipin Bihari, the late Bipin Bihari, called Myths and Symbols of Vedic Astrology. Very excellent book. Okay. So somebody's saying they've heard if the dispositors of Ketu and Rahu are in conjunction, it's a Maha Yoga. Does the auspicious result work in any house or only Kendra? Yogas always have to be qualified, okay? If the planet that's involved in creating a yoga gives more detriment to the horoscope than benefit, then the beneficial results of that yoga are not going to come to fruition. If it gives more benefit than it does detriment, then the beneficial sides of it are going to come to fruition. So in short, the two planets, the two dispositors of Ketu and Rahu in the Rashi chart being together is a very powerful thing. But how that's going to impact the individual and the results of it have to be determined by the strength of the planets, which are not to be judged simply in planetary dignity. It has to be judged through things like Ishta and Kashtaphala, Digbala, all sorts of things, right? So it's not as simple as that, okay? Somebody's asking if I use the Brigu Bindu point. I use it as a background thing in order to determine career in conjunction with a Jaimini technique that I use to determine career, which we're going to learn the fundamentals of on this coming course. And again, the link's above, okay? All right, let's see what else we've got here. So in Jaimini, the Atmakaraka being in the 9th, 10th, and 11th from the Swamsha, and Karakamsha gives good career timing. It depends on the Rashi dashas involved and whether something called Jaimini's second source of strength is going on. It's not as simple as just assessing that the Atmakaraka lying in the 9th, 10th, and 11th from the Swamsha. And it's determined by the Swamsha technique that you use. The Swamsha technique that I use, basically we use a different Swamsha in each divisional chart. So we take the Swamsha from the Navamsha chart, that's one position. And then we take where the Atmakaraka is in the Rashi chart, that's another position. So using the system I use in general, the Atmakaraka will always be in the Swamsha. Okay, and so there's so many different ways to translate Jaimini's Upadesha sutras because Jaimini wrote his sutras in code. And so everybody has interpreted Jaimini's sutras in a different way, right? Different people have different systems of working with it. You know, I teach one system, somebody else might teach a completely different one. And my opinion, techniques work wonderfully. So I'm not, saying somebody else's technique is wrong. And I'm not saying that my technique is wrong, okay? I'm just saying there's different techniques and different ways of interpreting it. And people have opinions in terms of what Jaimini really was saying, okay? I tend to hold by the opinions that are in the book that I recommended. I find those work better, and that's why I tend to use it. Okay. Let's see what we've got going on. So you're saying Amachakaraka. No, you really need to look at, in my opinion, you need to look at the Atmakaraka for career, not the Amachakaraka. Amachakaraka is your skills on some levels and your friends, your advisors, those things that administer to you or minister to you, right? Okay. Let's see what we've got going on here. So, in general, different people work with Jaimini in different ways, okay? It's confusing. It's confusing. I'll be the first to admit that it's confusing that so many people do Jaimini astrology in different ways. All right. Lagna Lord in 10th house, in its own house, D10, does it make a yoga for career? Yogas really need to be considered, in my humble opinion, in the Rashi chart. I don't tend to look at yogas in the Varga charts because I tend to look at yogas as being more of an astronomical occurrence rather than a factor placed in a Varga chart. Okay? I would shed some light on Bhava Chalita chart, but different people work with the Bhava Chalita chart in different ways, so the information I present to you might be completely useless to you. Okay, I use the Bhava Chalita chart in order to understand like house cusps, which are something that I very deeply work with because I do a lot of work with what are called house cusp nakshatras, also house cusp Varga deities and things like that. Those are things I really like to work with. But different people have different techniques that work with the Bhava Chalita chart. So I can't really comment widely on that because I don't know everybody else's techniques. I only know what I use it for. All right, thank you. Let's see what else we've got here in the questions section. Let's talk about the Arudha Lagna because I see people posing questions involving the Arudha Lagna. I find quite often there's a lot circulating out there about how the Arudha Lagna is the Lagna of the illusionary self. I don't buy by that. Okay, actually, when you look at Jaimini astrology, the Arudha Lagna is the same thing as the Pada for the ascendant. Pada means foot. The foot is, you know, the bottom of your body, right? It's where your body ends. So Padas, as per Jaimini astrology, I'm not talking about nakshatra Padas, I'm talking about Padas for signs. They tend to represent where a certain thing becomes mature. So if you're looking at the Pada for the 7th house, sorry about the noise outside. If you're looking at the Pada for the 7th house, that's the eventuality of relationships on many levels, right? So different things. So the Arudha Lagna is the eventuality of the self. It's a very important thing. It's not necessarily the illusionary self. Okay. Let's see what else we've got. And while I'm waiting to see some more questions pop up, just another reminder, the Jaimini Level 1 webinar course starts this coming Saturday. It's a 44-week course. Each class is recorded. I didn't mention that. So if you miss a class, it's really not a big deal because you can catch up with the class recording. I actually have some people who sign up for the course and never show up for class live. They just watch the class in a recording. The fee for the course per trimester is $329. If you pay in full, it's $899. Now, I've had people say in the past, they go, wow, that's more money than I can afford. But if you think about it, that's $20 per class. That's, you know, it's not really that expensive. It just seems like it is because you're having to pay for the course in full. But if you break it down by trimester, it's a lot easier. So you can do it by trimester if you want to, or of course you can do it by paying in full. All right. Let's see some more questions here. I might have to scroll up and see what people have to say. So while I'm kind of waiting, while I'm kind of scrolling up, let me see. Hopefully it won't interfere with things too much. Let me see if I can find the course listing of everything that's on the course. You know, I don't need to do that. I can just kind of go over it, right? So we're going to learn techniques to see if an individual gets married, because if you're going to predict marriage, you might as well know if, you know, there's no potential whatsoever for marriage. And so that's a good one to know. We're going to learn preliminary techniques on the Level 1 course to begin to determine the career of an individual. Jaimini is one of the only texts that I know that actually covers career, and it gives a very good technique for determining this. And what I like about Jaimini Sutras, amongst other things, is it tends to handle things in stages. So earlier on in the text, Jaimini covers the fundamentals for career, and then later on, he tends to add extra techniques to it to build upon the technique so that in finality, you have a full technique. But he gets you going with fundamentals that give you a lot of power in terms of being able to determine that. And I really like that. So that's another thing that we're going to work with on the course. There are some really good techniques to understand if the individual is more prone to diseases that wear away at their life force and that, you know, may eventually end up being fatal, all other factors being considered. In addition to that, let's see, I'm trying to think of everything else that we're going to cover on this course because there's so much that we're going to cover. So in addition to that, there's a technique to determine the path of liberation for the individual, which is the same technique that's used to determine the deity that the individual will be more predisposed to. And it gives you two deities, one which is the deity for your spiritual evolution, and the other the deity to help you with materially related problems. And it's a really wonderful technique. And the thing that's really great about Jaimini techniques is they're so accurate and they're so simple once you know how to work with Jaimini astrology. Let's see what else we've got here. And so if you're interested in that Jaimini course, again, you can register at the link above. We're going to cover so much on that course. And I'm taking this course on a working with everybody at the level they're at basis. So what do I mean by that? We're going to get as far with the course as we possibly can in the 44 weeks given. There will be a level 2 course that will start next year where we'll resume from where we left off and begin to build upon what we learned in level 1. Okay? Is it true that Rahu in Leo gives almost the same result as the sun, or are you meaning to say, is it true that Rahu in Leo gives almost the same result as Rahu conjuncting sun? Is that what you're meaning to say? Can you clarify your question, please? I'm not sure about your question. All right, let's see what else we've got here. And, I've probably got another 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll have to move on. I'm only quiet because I'm scrolling up to people's questions and seeing what we've got going on. Everybody's quiet. You're all listening today, and you're not asking very many questions. All right, let's see what we've got here. Okay, so let's see what we've got. Does going through a dasha associated with the 8th house, meaning the 8th lord, is I think what you're asking, indicate sudden changes or at least a certain change in life? It indicates on a certain level changes, perhaps a certain amount of upheaval, but the strength or weakness of the 8th lord as per the dignity, which is going to determine how you feel about it, and the Baladi Avasta and the Jagradati Avasta, which determine the level of maturity and awareness with which you're able to approach those changes, are going to determine whether that's something that's not such a big deal for you, or whether that's something that is, very, creates a lot of upheaval, right? That's why I'm never just big on giving vast generalizations in terms of answers, because it's not as simple of a thing as that. So I can give you kind of an if, and, or but answer. Okay, let's see what else we've got. Pardon me. Okay. So by the method that I am saying, the Atmakaraka is more of an indicator for career than the Amachakaraka. Yes, because the Atmakaraka is the self indicator. Okay. It will also determine your vocational path. And the Jaimini technique that I use, which is based upon the Swamsha and other things, uses the Atmakaraka, not the Amachakaraka. Okay. So karakas, let's talk about karakas, because somebody's asking a question of shed some light on the role of the Dara Karaka and wife. Pardon me. Karakas are producers of things. Okay, so a karaka, like the Dara Karaka, is a producer of the spouse. It will determine the general nature of the spouse. Okay, then in addition to that, what you will see is that the house will represent a deeper, more concrete, more subtleties of the spouse. Then if you add into it the Lord of the spouse, we're seeing the spouse in action and how that influences our life. And then the Pada for the spouse, or the Pada for the 7th house, that shows us the eventuality of all of those things. Okay, so if you look at all those things, you get a very well-rounded picture of the spouse in general. Okay, let's see what else we've got. I don't use Ramana, Lahiri, or KP. I use something called Dhruva Galactic Center Middle of Mula. Okay. Let's see what else we've got. So somebody's saying, I mean, Rahu in Leo gives the same result as that of Sun in Leo. No, it doesn't. Rahu in Leo gives the results of Rahu in Leo. Okay. So in terms of that, what do I mean by that? It means that in general, the individual, if you have Rahu in Leo, you always have Ketu in Aquarius. And when Ketu is in a sign of Saturn, it tends to make it so that the individual is more predisposed to being concerned about their basic animalistic needs at the expense of being concerned about their creative fulfillment. So Rahu in Leo tends to make the individual have to confront that vulnerability they have about becoming creatively fulfilled. That's not the same as the Sun in Leo. Okay. Let's see. Somebody is saying, is this just a general approach? I don't see your first question, so I have to scroll up for that. So what was the first part of your question? Because I'm seeing, or is this just a general approach? But I don't know what you're referring to being a general approach. And please accept my apologies, but it's just things scroll down the screen so quickly that I don't see it. Oh, I see it. There it is. I don't tend to do a lot of work with the Pushkara, Bhagas, and Pushkara Navamshas, just mainly because I don't really find that I have a need to, because I'm finding so much through working with nakshatras, the emissary, as I like to call them, of the nakshatras, the strength and well-being of those, taking into account the Shadbala, which specifically 2 elements of the Shadbala, actually 3, which is Thanabala, Digbala, and Cheshtabala. And so I find I get as much as I need for that. So I don't really have as much of a need to work with Pushkara Bhagas and Pushkara Navamshas, because generally I find the things that I'm working with to find this information out are a lot more accurate than that. So that's why I tend to gravitate towards this. Let's see what we've got going on here. Okay, so somebody's saying, can I elaborate on Arudha Lagna more? The Lagnapada can be used. Let's call it the Lagnapada. Let's not call it Arudha Lagna. I like calling it the Lagnapada because that's what it's called in Jaimini. You can look at the 11th from the Lagnapada in the Navamsha and the Rashi chart, and that can give you some indications in terms of how the individual will bring in income, right? That's one factor that's there. The well-being or the weakness of that and the aspects that that area is receiving by Rashi aspect are another indicator of it. So those things can definitely be used. Okay. Let's see what else we've got. I just answered your question, Chinmay. And so please, people, please try not to put the same question several times, because it's on many levels. I know you're just really wanting to get your questions answered, but we have to try to give, like space to everybody giving their questions answered too. Okay. Let's see what we've got here. So I'm waiting for some more questions to come up. I've got another 3 or 4 minutes and then I really have to go. Oh, it's okay. There's no need to apologize. People are sincerely wanting the answers to their questions. And I don't mean to seem like such a toughie or a disciplinarian for asking people not to do that. I'm just more trying to help people to know, because they don't understand that. Okay. So something that's helpful to understand is Vedic astrology is very vast, and there are so many different approaches to Vedic astrology that you'll find quite often that there are few astrologers who are working with the same techniques. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's actually a really good thing for every astrologer to have all these different techniques, because it gives us the capacity to learn from each other. And I think on a certain level, that's what it's all about. I'm not an exclusivist, which is why you will not really see me criticizing different approaches to astrology, because different people have different approaches. And I don't think it's really a good thing to criticize different approaches to astrology. But sometimes you may ask me a question and it's not really something that I work with, so I'm able to comment more on the things that I tend to work with more, okay, because it's what I'm passionate about. All right. 10th Lord transiting 3rd house. Will it impact career, job loss? Transits to a chart, you have to take into account the dasha. So it's not as simple of a factor of going the 10th Lord transiting the 3rd house is going to bring job loss. It won't always do that. It depends on the dasha that you're in. Are you in a dasha that indicates that that is something that can come into being? If you're not, then it's not going to happen. Okay. Why do planets have nakshatras in enemy signs? I don't understand your question. I'm sorry. If you could clarify, please, that would be helpful. All right. Actually, sadly, I have to go because I have something I have to do very soon. So maybe 5 more minutes and then I'm going to have to move on. Okay. Can maybe take another question or 2. There are so many different approaches to Jaimini astrology. Let's kind of explain this. Jaimini, basically, he wrote his sutras in code so that he could safeguard the teachings, right? Because if you look at a lot of texts like Brihat Parashara Horus Shastra, it's widely known that there are bits in there that Parashara didn't really write, that got added at a later date. Jaimini didn't want this to happen. So he basically would do things like put a word in the sutras that you're supposed to determine the numerical equivalent of, and then take that numerical equivalent and turn it into a Rashi. So he did all sorts of things like that, which are very confusing to understand. And it's made it so different people interpret his sutras differently. So, and different people come up with different systems to work with it. And so it's really complicated. So yeah, it's different people are working with different concepts when it boils down to Vedic astrology. I would say that on many levels, there are two main schools of thought. One is the school of thought that is connected to the book that I was talking about, that Ernst Wilhelm came out with. And there's another school of thought that's connected to the K.N. Rao school of thought. And there's also smaller schools of thought within, you know, and so really there's just so many different takes on it. And I'm sad to give you a roundabout answer like that, but I kind of have to. I probably won't make a video about Prashna chart interpretation because I tend to focus my videos more upon transits and occasional techniques and things like that. Okay. Is it bad to have a strong Rahu? A strong Rahu really means a strong dispositor of Rahu. I know a lot of people like to work with Rahu being exalted in a certain position and debilitated in a certain position, but Rahu and Ketu are points, much like the ascendant and descendant. So even though they're given the status of grahas, they don't have a physical form. So the philosophy I work with is they cannot have ownership of a sign. They can't have exaltation. Their strength is determined by the planets that disposit them and the planets that join them. Okay, so there are a lot of different factors that go into it. Okay, so just a reminder, if you're interested in Jaimini astrology, you can still register for the course. It starts this Saturday, 4:30 p.m. London time. If you go onto my website, if you look at the link above in this video, you'll see a link that'll take you to my website where you can read more about the course. And if you're interested, you can register for the course as well. That's going to do it for today. Sorry I don't have more time. Please do take the very best care of yourself. Bye now.